Before we get into Metal Gear Solid Rising, I'm going to briefly go over some of the history of the Metal Gear franchise, so those who may not be familiar with the series have a better understanding. A decades-long narrative that would span multiple platforms, spawning originally on the MSX2 system July 13th, 1987 in Japan, with the first entry aptly named Metal Gear, created by Hideo Kojima and published by Konami. Formed March 21st, 1969, Konami would not really begin achieving success until the 1980s, when they ventured into the arcade gaming scene, and from this eventually moving on to home console systems. As for Mr. Kojima, he is at this point enshrined in the gaming world. Some view him as a genius, whilst others not so much. Either way, he did help bring to life a series that has stood the test of time. Kojima and Konami parted ways in 2015 due to apparent creative differences. He currently runs Kojima Productions, in which he has worked on projects since, such as the either you love it or you hate it title Death Stranding and its upcoming sequel. The story of the Metal Gear series is at this point very convoluted, and it's not the simplest of things to unweave. There's a lot going on. Here's the short layman's version. The first game, Metal Gear, again released July 13th, 1987 on the MSX2, covers a character called Solid Snake, part of a special forces unit known as Foxhound. He is tasked with going behind enemy lines into a state that is known as Outer Heaven, in hopes to destroy a nuclear weapon capable type mech. It's pretty much a mobile nuke launcher, so it's able to launch said nuke from wherever. Throughout the other games, you'll find Snake and co. attempting to accomplish similar scenarios. The stories go much deeper and usually into the realms of the bizarre, but that's the very general gist. Following this, on July 20th, 1990, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake would be released, also on the MSX2, this time seeing Snake infiltrate a heavily armed nation known as Zanzibar Land. In 1998, the series would see itself jump from 2D to 3D with the release of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation, which is when the series really exploded into popularity. Snake would be sent to infiltrate a nuclear weapons disposal facility on an island called Shadow Moses. The game was, and still is today, highly regarded as one of the best stealth games of its time, the godfather of the genre if you will. The game introduced many mechanics that hadn't been experienced in a 3D game up until that point. It would be the inspiration for many games in the genre for years to come. It's said that everyone remembers where they are when a historic event occurs. It just so happens September 3rd, 1998 would be one of those for the gaming world, with the release of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty on PlayStation 2, introducing the biggest bait and switch that I can recall in gaming history. The game begins with Solid Snake jumping onto a cloaked tanker to verify the existence of a new Metal Gear. Making your way through the tanker would take roughly between 1 to 2 hours on average for first-time players. Upon completion of said chapter, the game switches to a different section called The Plant, with the glorious reveal of Raiden, the new playable character for the rest of the game. That's right, no going back to Snake. Yes, Kojima pretty much tricked everyone, because up until its release, Snake was the only playable character shown in trailers and other promotional material. The vast majority of players did not appreciate this, to say the least. I, however, didn't mind. I welcomed the change. I much preferred doing cartwheels to rolling anyway. Nonetheless, like its predecessor, its sales figures were extremely high. Following on from this would come Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, releasing on the PlayStation 2 November 17th, 2004. Instead of being a direct sequel to MGS2's story, it would go all the way back in time to before MGS1, and you'd play as a version of Big Boss infiltrating a nuclear site located in a jungle. Then would come the Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, releasing on the PlayStation 3 June 12, 2008. This would jump back to the present time and pick up 5 years after the ending of MGS2, allowing players to take control once more of Solid Snake, whom has aged considerably due to accelerated aging, no thanks to his genetic coding. Raiden would also make a return, albeit much differently, as a cyborg ninja, and would not be playable this time around. There's a lot more games in the series, but this leads us to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which functions as a spin-off to the core series. The majority of titles in the series are, as mentioned previously, grounded heavily in stealth mechanics, and usually consist of stopping some type of nuclear-capable mech. This is where Revengeance takes its departure from the norm. Instead of seeing the player sneaking through numerous environments, the game sees the player take on the role of cyborg ninja Raiden in a high action packed orientated HF HF blade slashing extravaganza, picking up 4 years after MGS4, taking on a group known as Desperado Enterprises, attempting to foil their plans. The game was developed by Platinum Games, whom are known for titles such as Bayonetta and Nier Automata. In collaboration with them would be Kojima Productions, which at the time was a subsidiary of Konami. The game would initially launch on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in February 2013, later seeing releases on various other platforms, including but not limited to Windows and Mac. This was not always the plan. In 2009, the Kojima Productions website would feature a page with a mysterious countdown timer, and the words "lightning bolt action" would appear, which was a play on the traditional MGS tagline of tactical espionage action. Combining this with the fact that it's well known Raiden's name in Japanese can mean lightning and thunder, led people to put 2 and 2 together that there was possibly a Raiden project announcement on the way. That year, at a Game Developers Conference, which took place between March 23rd and 27th in San Francisco, towards the end of a keynote presentation given by Hideo Kojima, he would tease things by showing a picture which appeared to be Raiden and the words "the next MGS." Information on the project would be tight-lipped, but during 2009's E3, a teaser would be revealed, showing what looked like traditional Japanese illustrations mixed with glimpses of images showing a seemingly robotic body and hand, before revealing Raiden, accompanied by the previously mentioned tagline, and revealing what the title would be, Metal Gear Solid Rising, with the voice of the character Roy Campbell saying,
"Metal Gear Solid Rising."
and in doing so, fulfilling the prophecy that a Raiden-centered title was on the way. It would become known that Kojima himself was not directly involved in the development of the game, but rather taken on the role of an executive producer. Instead, the game was being developed by a more younger and less experienced team within Kojima Productions. Information would still be very scarce after this reveal, with only minimal details being sprinkled around news articles and through interviews. Ryzen would not be the first iteration of Raiden playable as his cyborg ninja persona. Bundled with MGS4 was another game called Metal Gear Online, which would also have a later standalone version released in Japan. Included were a multitude of game modes that could see players pitted against other players, either alone or in teams, depending on the mode chosen. Expansion packs would also be introduced. These would add new features, maps, and characters. The Scene expansion would see the inclusion of both Vamp and Raiden as depicted in MGS4. Raiden would be able to perform some feats and abilities seen in MGS4, such as spins, flips, fall from great heights without damage, enhanced strength and speed, amongst others. He would also come equipped with throwing knives, a pistol, and the ability to use his visor to detect traps, and of course his trusty HF blade that could be set to lethal or non-lethal and deflect incoming projectiles if holding block. Before any gameplay for Rising was shown, I'd envisioned this being how he would work in the upcoming title. However, in 2010's E3, a short trailer would be released displaying a pre-rendered scene of Raiden infiltrating an area before slicing apart a robot and taking its energy cells for consumption. Following this would be gameplay, giving an example of what to expect, showing that the developers had chosen to go more action-based, which looking back made sense. They wanted Raiden to be able to do the things he had achieved in the MGS4 cutscenes, such as his fight with the geckos. Also being shown for the first time would be the system called Zandatsu, in Japanese meaning cut and take, which is exactly how the system would work, the player being able to cut enemies and objects around the environments to pieces, and if performed on say a cyborg, their energy cells could be extracted. Ryzen was at this time set to be the first game developed on the Fox engine, which is a Konami owned game engine. It would later be used in the creation of the Pro Evolution Soccer series, the PT demo, and both Metal Gear Solid 5 titles, Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. Gameplay would again mainly have consisted of high degrees of action, and for those that wanted to be more traditional by being sneaky, it would have mixed with a faster paced acrobatic type stealth system. This was being called hunting stealth. Raiden would have had access to similar weapons he had in his possession in MGS4, which can be assumed would mean other than his HF blade, he would at minimum likely have had access to throwing knives and possibly access to a pistol. The Zandatsu system at one point was applied to mostly everything in a level, meaning you could pretty much cut anything to pieces. However, at some point this became scaled back as to not have the game become too hard to play. More details of this system would emerge, noting that depending on the enemy's armor, this could have required more effort to get through. The player could also choose to cut an enemy at almost any desired angle, thus incorporating the ability to cut off specific limbs or focusing on the enemy weapons by slicing them apart to limit their ability to fight back. Being too slash-happy could also penalize the player. For example, if the player were to attempt to cut a droid to take their power cell, if cut in the wrong area, it would damage it, and in doing so prevent the power cell from being collected. An online component was also being teased, along with the implementation of the PlayStation Move and Microsoft's Kinect. However, not much information on these other than a few comments were ever made public. Some articles also make note that the game was supposed to have an open world, wherein Raiden would be able to perform missions pertaining to assassinations. However, I couldn't find any further information supporting this from actual people involved in the development. The story would have bridged the gap between MGS2 and MGS4, supposedly revealing how Raiden came from being human to more or less a machine, as we see him in MGS4. How deep the story would have gone is less clear, as Matsuyama, the game's then creative producer, stated that he wasn't keen on making the game too story driven and preferred to focus mainly on gameplay. He also made clear he wanted the game to be accessible to those that have not played either MGS2 or MGS4, so he would not have used either of those as anchor points. Instead, he would have used the past, i.e. Raiden's child soldier days and the events of MGS2 as a loose background filler, instead of tying them directly into the main story, and noting that the game would also not lead into the events of MGS4. We can obtain more information on how the story may have played out if we look at the official MGS4 database entry for Raiden during this period of his life. In its entirety, it states as follows: that after MGS2, Raiden began living together with Rosemary, but the tragic memories of his days as a child soldier started to resurface, causing tension in their relationship and leading him to leave her. Raiden learned that Olga's daughter Sunny was being held in Area 51. He successfully rescued Sunny with the help of the Patriots resistance group, the Paradise Lost Army. After hearing of Rosemary's miscarriage and subsequent remarriage to Roy Campbell, Raiden became despondent. He left Sunny in the care of Hal Emmerich and Solid Snake, and then began working on retrieving Big Boss's remains from the Patriots for the Paradise Lost Army, leading to his capture. As a prisoner of the Patriots, Raiden was used as a subject for experiments in exoskeleton enhancement surgery. Raiden was treated as a test subject in the Patriots' research into creating the perfect soldier, just as Grey Fox had been made into the enhanced and heavily drugged cyborg ninja before him. With the help of the Paradise Lost Army, Raiden managed to escape his captivity. After undergoing surgery to clear his body of nanomachines, he was successful in reclaiming Big Boss's remains from the Patriots. The enhancements implanted throughout Raiden's body, however, were too severe to allow him to live again as a normal human. He elected to disappear from the life of his fiancée, Rosemary. Left to wander the earth, Raiden studied scouting techniques under a Native American shaman living in Alaska, also learning to hunt. Upon receiving orders from Big Mama to assist Solid Snake and lead him to the Paradise Lost Army, Raiden set out into battle once more. Kojima had mentioned that while he wasn't directly a part of the development team, he still held control over the project. He set boundaries for the team to follow, and if he felt lines were being crossed, he would say something. I would assume straying too far out the lines of Raiden's pre-established lore would be something he would speak out against. YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming released supposedly previously unknown information on the story and alleged reasons for the cancellation. However, they claimed their informants wanted to remain anonymous. So while what they claim to may be true, it can't be substantiated unless they can reveal their informants or said informants come forward themselves. For all I know, their insider could be a 12-year-old. The story details they revealed could simply be a fanfic. I don't know the YouTuber or how trustworthy they are, and it feels the equivalent of me saying source and their response being trust me bro. Maybe at the time of making this video, they have been revealed. Let me know in the comments if that's the case. I have included a screenshot of said story reveal for those curious. Feel free to pause and read it. Kojima has mentioned previously that he'd have preferred the game to be centered around Grey Fox instead of Raiden. It's previously been mentioned that Raiden may have been the first of multiple games, so it's highly possible that a future sequel could have delivered just that. At some point in 2011, Kojima would cancel Rising, stating that he believed nothing good would come out of this. Eventually, the game would be handed over to Platinum Games and retitled to the now released Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, following a vastly different story that would now predate the events of MGS4, while still retaining some of the original gameplay concepts, albeit different to their original counterparts. Unfortunately, it seems that we'll probably never see the original intended version of Raiden. It's not impossible, just unlikely. I for one found the idea of seeing Raiden's transition into a cyborg ninja more appealing to that of the story we were given in Revengeance. So, why did it fail? There's rumors that Kojima wanted to take the team off the project as he wanted all hands on deck with the upcoming MGS5 development. However, I couldn't find any information to verify this. So, it seems the most likely reason is the one we were given. The team responsible were just too inexperienced and couldn't make the game flow together in a reasonable amount of time. And with that, we've looked at some of the history of the Metal Gear franchise, Raiden's conception, abortion, and of course, its revengeance. I'd like to end this video by thanking you for watching. I wish you all well, and for now, goodbye.